Welcome, YouTubers. I recently purchased this very nice Smith & Wesson Model 19-4 38-357. Hardly used. Shoots beautifully. Wonderful gun. I took it out to the range with some 38 special reloads that I made, and I was using CCI primers and Winchester primers, and on the CCIs probably 1/3 of them did not fire on the first strike, and on the Winchester some of them did not fire on the first strike, but most of them did. And so I wondered what was wrong with this gun. Was it some problem with the firing pin? Had no idea. But I was surprised about how few of them failed to fire, because I expected this gun to be exceptionally reliable. So after some research on the internet and YouTube, I found out that the tensioner on the mainspring was probably not fully tightened, and I'm going to show you how to do the tightening of that right now. Now this gun is empty. I've already checked it multiple times, but I'm going to show you how to do it. First of all, you have to take off the grip. And to take off the grip, you have to unscrew this one screw, and that's all there is to it. Now look, when you're working on a gun, get a good set of gun screwdrivers, and nobody makes anything better than GraceUSA. That's the best company in the world to deal with. Everybody sells them. Midway, all the big companies sell them. You can't deal with a better company, and I have this set of punches, a brass hammer, and their screwdriver set. So I'm going to take the screw out on this, and I'm going to try to work with one hand on the phone and do the screw, and we'll see how it comes out. But I'm using a screwdriver here, as you can see, and with one hand I'm going to take the screw out. And let's see if we got it out far enough to take it apart. Okay, there we have it apart. This is the mainspring right here, and the tensioner for the mainspring is a screw that's right over here. I have to take the other grip off. And right over here is a screw that tensions the mainspring. Now some people tend to lighten and unloosen this screw just so they'll have a lighter trigger pull. But with a lighter trigger pull, you may not have a good strike on your primers. So supposedly this screw needs to be tightened all the way. So using a good screwdriver again, make sure that this screw is tightened all the way in, and that's going to give you an adequate strike with your firing pin. Now, there's a difference in how the firing pin fires, whether you fire single action or double action. And with single action, you may get a better strike than you do with double action. So when you're really trying to see whether you're going to get a good enough strike on your primers, you probably need to do it in double action to see if you fire off every single primer. Now the other thing that I did, I'm not going to put it together for you guys to show it, it's just redo the one screw and put the grips back together. This has been tightened down to full position right now. And you may have to do put some Loctite on it, and if you do use the blue Loctite, don't use red stuff, because the blue Loctite's removable. It's only one screw, it's very easy to do. Just tighten that screw right over there until it's fully tightened. The other thing that I did was I decided to make some variation of my 38 special loads to see what different primers did. And you know, there's always the argument about whether one brand of primers is different than another. So here's what I did, and here's a little chart of what I did. I loaded up a bunch of CCI 500s And then I also did testing of the speeds of the primers. And notice that all of the primers pretty much had the same high, low, and average velocity. And here's what I noticed was the difference before I tightened up the tension screw on the mainspring. The CCI and one brand of the Winchesters, and I put down two separate Winchesters because I have two separate lots, and I wanted to see if it was a problem with one of the lots. The CCIs proved to be the most likely to have a light strike on them before I tightened the tension spring. The Federal primers and the Remington primers fired even with the screw on the tension screen way out. So they required a lot less to get a good strike. But the CCI were the toughest, and the Winchester was about halfway between. So the old argument about which primers are harder to strike and fire, in my experience, the CCIs were harder. The Federals went off very easily, the Remingtons went off very easily, and the Winchesters had some failures to fire before I tightened up the tension spring. One other thing that I noticed was that pretty much the velocities were the same, and I'm loading with a Lee press, not a progressive press, but one of their turret presses, and I'm using the standard powder measure that comes with it. So the powder is not actually weighed, it's done by volume, and so everything is pretty much the same. It didn't matter much which primer I use as far as average velocity. I think they're all pretty much the same here. Using 38 special, 158 grain bullets, and I'm using new Winchester 38 special cartridges. And these are new, they haven't been refired. The final thing that I noticed was how much force did it take to put the primers into the brass. The Federal and the Remington seated very easily in new brass. No problem at all. The Winchester and CCI were the hardest to seat deep. And the reason I really tried to get them seat deep was because there is a possibility that light seating of your primer will make the firearm not fire when first hit with the firing pin, and sometimes it takes a second strike to drive the primer deeper into the brass and may fire on the second strike. So I wanted to make sure that all my primers were adequately seated. This was easily done with the Federal and Remington, and took a lot more hand pressure on my Lee turret press to seat the primers on the CCI and Winchester. Does it make any difference? Once I got the tension screw tightened on my 619, it worked great. And again, here's the tension screw right there. You can see the mainspring has a little bow to it like it's supposed to, and fires superbly. I also have a Colt Python, which almost looks exactly alike compared to this Smith & Wesson, also a superb gun. Never had any problem with the Colt Python, and I don't think I'm going to have any problems with this. I may have to put a little Loctite on that if it shifts, and the screw can shift apparently if it's been fired a while. Most of the time, the tension is not proper because somebody has loosened it trying to make for a lighter trigger pull. The trigger pull is very adequate on this gun, either single action or double action. And I've actually measured trigger pull on it, and I think it was like 3.5 pounds in single action and 8 or 9 pounds or 10 pounds in double action. But it was very adequate, and it fires very nicely with that. So that's my little video. The lesson to be learned is that there is a definite difference in the primers. There's a difference in how they seat in new brass as well. And if you have a very sensitive gun that you really can't get a good tap on the primer, you probably need to stick with the Federal or the Remington. CCIs definitely were harder to indent that primer, and so were the Winchesters. And if you are going to get a set of screwdrivers, don't be chintzy on this. These Grace people are wonderful. They are just wonderful. When I bought this set from Grace, I thought I could use it on my Marlin lever actions also. It turns out that the screwdrivers for the Marlin lever action are a little bit different than for the regular rifles. Grace was kind enough to send me a set at no charge. They're just a wonderful company to deal with, and they make wonderful products, so I'm giving them this little plug too. I hope this video is helpful for some of you. It definitely taught me a lot, and other people posting on YouTube taught me how to properly set the tension spring on the tension screw on this gun for my mainspring tension. Glad to be of service for everybody, and have a good day.